So it was about 8 years ago when I decided I was going to depart from the Democratic Plantation, Democratic Party Plantation. This was a midterm slash local election, and there was a couple, two assembly people that were running for. At the time, I lived in Troy, and they were running for the North Central Troy district. And the one guy, there was I don't remember his name, but it was a white dude and it was a black lady. And the black lady came to my house, knocked on the door, and spoke with me for about 20-25 minutes. She asked me, you know, what, as a resident of Troy, as a citizen of Troy, what was my, what did I like, what I didn't like, my frustrations, things that could improve, and what she was going to do if elected. Now, right off the bat, no Republican came to visit. The other Democratic candidate didn't bother. They all sent like little postcards requesting that I vote for them. All the while, this 2010, this is kind of where I'm starting to get into my conspiracy theorist self. So I'm reading all this information. I'm seeing that, how the people are saying, well, the Democrats take the black vote for granted. Long story short, I voted for this lady. She didn't win. She jumped out far ahead. She was, winning by a lot. What you have to understand was North Central Troy, the way they had the district set up, it was about half working class, working poor, and the rest were upper class, which extended up into a more affluent area. Now, the other guy won. In the meantime, 2011 rolls around, 2012 rolls around. I'm hot and heavy in the middle of my conspiratorial awakening, realizing that everything around me is not what it seems. Realizing, probably for the first time in my life, that it was the Democrats who actually had black people in slavery. And I started looking at how they treated us, or just treated the concept or even the ideal of dealing with black people. And I looked at it and I said, this ain't respectful. Then I hearkened back to 2010 when it was the midterm of local elections, and how a lot of the white pundits sent a postcard requesting that I vote for them. Not even on the postcard suggesting what they would do for me or do for the people of Troy. They just wanted my vote. And then I began to realize that's all they value us for, is to help them get in power, and they do nothing for us. So I didn't vote in the 2012 election, the 2014, or the 2016, and I will not be voting in the 2018 election. one of the things that I always say is voting for the lesser of two evils, still voting for evil. I just won't do it. Now, unless there's a candidate that genuinely represents what I believe in, then I will probably vote. But up until that happens, which I don't foresee it happening, I choose to not get involved in the process. People, as you probably or would guess, criticize me for my stance and my take. And I tell them, do you think our ancestors fought and died just to simply vote? Do you think like that was the only thing that they were focused on, which was just having black people vote? Not necessarily vote for what's in their best interest, but just to vote. I'm just not going to partake in the system that says if your guy doesn't win, you are now subjected to the rule of someone that you don't like. To me, that is not freedom. That is not independence. That is borderline dictatorship. We've been convinced that this is the system and this is the best system and this is how it works. But when the person that wins has paid and bought the election, how much faith can you honestly have in a system that is corrupt to the core? Democrats never cared about blacks. They wanted blacks in slavery. Not saying that Republicans cared either. It was a political football at the time, because even Lincoln quotes that he doesn't really care about, I'm paraphrasing, but he didn't really care about the slavery aspect. But he felt that if slavery could exist and the ability to keep the nation united could be possible, then he would pursue that avenue. So don't get it twisted. I may sit here and it may sound like I'm always bashing black people and black women, but at the end of the day, I know the game. I went back and I studied the game. So I now know when the game is being ran, because I went back and looked at history. And that's what history is for. History is for a point of reference. It's not for us to stay there and live there and blame other people for things that happened to our people hundreds of years ago. Even if there are similitudes of things happening that happened back then, or similarities in those things. Because at the end of the day, there was something called a Black Wall Street, which means at one point in time that was, that time frame was closer to slavery than the time frame that we live in now. And yet those blacks managed to find a way and a means to respectfully deal with each other, to come together and build something. So, at the end of the day, yes, I don't vote. I haven't voted for several years, and I don't intend on voting ever again until there's a righteous candidate. And I don't think that's ever going to happen in this American system. Unfortunately, like Wu-Tang Clan said, cash rules everything around me. Cream get the money. Dollar, dollar bill, y'all. And that's what it boils down to. Everybody trying to get that paper. A paper that has no value. Backed up by no natural currency. No gold. No silver. No platinum. No nothing. It's printed out of thin air. And you believe that money, that paper money, has any value. It's just a pacifier until they can get everything on a microchip. It's bound to happen. But you have to understand, you have to have the foresight to see the technology now for the end game later. That's one thing when I started researching 9/11, realizing that the two places that were hit on the buildings had financial records on many companies, that there was a financial auditing software that had a glitch in it, or a loophole, so to speak. And numbers and figures were fudged, and no one ever caught it. All those servers that had all that information was blown up, demolished, blown into powder. And they were able to restore some of the disks, and that's how they found all this information out. The reason why Building 7 collapsed, even though it was the newest building in the World Trade Center complex, was because they had FBI investigation notes and memos and evidence in that building. It was more than just Rudy Giuliani's command head center, which ironically enough he decided he wasn't going to use on that day, but use a church somewhere. See, when you research and you begin to realize how corrupt this system is, you begin to lose faith in it. And when you begin to lose faith in the system begins to crumble. Their power begins to weaken. And now the main threat becomes terror. Or the controlling mechanism becomes terror. To have you in constant fear of your life. That's the game. Make black fear white, white fear black, white fear Arab, Arab make Arab hate white. It's all a game. If you can divide a house, it will not stand. There's no way for it to stand. Because everybody else is too busy trying to get at each other's throat, not realizing we all have a rope around our throat. And the more we move and the more we struggle to get off that chair, to get to each other's neck, we end up hanging ourselves.